Detroit is different here at the Just League Conference as we just closed out, and I'm here with somebody that definitely represents well when we think about Detroit in most of these conversations. Stephen Henderson, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Everything is cool. And now I guess I definitely have to, I've thrown like, what do you think about diversity? Where's Detroit going? But you've kind of been in this space for a little bit as far as like seeing these sessions, conferences, and things like that. So the question I have for you is, with seeing some of the faces that you've seen before, and then the faces that weren't even here, how ready do you feel the region is right now for embracing, really, as I say, the diversity is one thing, equity is one thing.
And they're different, right? They're different things.
And especially the inclusion.
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, I think the good news is that I hear more people talking about these issues than I have before. I hear more people saying the right things when they're talking about these issues. If we go back to 2020 and the protests against the police and the response that you saw from the corporate community, from government to that, was really different than what we had seen before, right? People were saying the right things, and we had this pledge from all of these CEOs that they were going to make inclusion and equity a central part of what they were doing. Now, that's step one. Step 2 through 200 is getting them to actually do things differently, to get to the outcome stage where things do look different. And look, we're not doing great on that. I mean, I think some people have lost focus on that since 2020. And some people have found that it's hard. This is hard work. You're talking about a fundamental change in the way that businesses operate, in the way that cultures are built and maintained. It's a consistency thing almost more than anything, right? You've got to do it all the time. You got to be thinking about it all the time. We're not there. I mean, we're not close to there. But I don't want to paint a negative picture, because I think it's important that people are saying the right things and thinking about what they say before they say it, right? So we've taken that step. We've just got to figure out how to get to the other steps. So
as you say, these steps are being made now as conversations have shifted. You feel like getting back on track a little bit more. In some ways, as you mentioned, George Floyd, I think George Floyd was like a clarion moment, akin to what Emmett Till was at one point in time. Absolutely. So moving beyond that, getting inclusive. For some, it's a blind spot. Like it was questions like, how do we become more inclusive? How, if I'm a white guy or our company wants to be more diverse, and then this also goes into disability and things like that. Like, how do you meet? How do you even know what is culturally acceptable? Because we look at moments like Congress kneeling with kente cloth, and it's like that was a little bit tone deaf. Yeah. So like. How do you know what you're doing is in that space? How do you even get an ear to the streets?
So first of all, you got to have people who are not like you around, right? And I say that to everybody right now. There isn't enough actual diversity in any business that I can think of to sufficiently surface that issue all the time, right? And in the businesses where you do see more diversity than in others, you see it at a level that's not the decision-making level, right? I mean, how many of these businesses have African Americans, native Detroiters, in the C-suite, right? In executive roles, helping to actually run the company, not just there to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We always get that job. But, the vice president of finance, the vice president of human resources, the vice president of, or the chief of staff, when you include people at that level, then you are actually in a position to change the culture, because that person does have more of a connection to the things that you don't. That person can tell you what is appropriate and what's not before you do it. That person can help you make decisions in a way that reflect inclusion and equity. And that's the hardest step to get to be honest. I mean, because that's relinquishing power, that's bringing in people from the outside who, maybe you don't trust, maybe you don't know. I think we instinctively resist that kind of thing. And so leadership, white leadership, has got to pivot to be able to say, all right, we need actual voices, actual faces in the decision-making structure to be able to create a culture where all of these crazy things don't happen, where we don't make terrible decisions, where we don't do offensive things. And that's, like I said, we were at step 1, and we got to get, to steps 2 through 200. I think that's step like 175, right? That's late in the process because it requires such a cultural change on the part of the people who are making the decisions right now.
That's deep. And I got one more guilty pleasure question while I got you here.
Yeah.
When I think about diversity in this region, one name kind of stands out as far as like, I'm still wondering even how he executed and pulls it off. But I'm going to just use this as like an example. That's Dr. Curtis Ivory with WC3D.
Sure.
When we think about the spread and the scope of what WC3 does and how inclusive it's been in its development, what is it that they're doing in that space that's not present in other spaces?
Again, it starts at the top. Think about Dr. Ivory. Think about who he is and how he acts, right? It's not just who he is internally, it's what he projects, what he stands for every time he opens his mouth or every time he makes a decision. This is a guy walking the walk in a way that other people have not really embraced, and it's maybe because they don't know or maybe because they don't want to. I don't know. That's really for them to decide. But he's a great model of what it takes in that leadership role to say, I'm not just saying this is important, I'm going to act like it's important, and I'm going to hold other people accountable for making it important. That is the real key, right? I say I want you to do this, I want you to put a priority on this, but what do I do to make sure you're doing that? And if you don't do it, what do I do? What's the reaction? You got to have somebody like that, and he's not the only person doing that, but there are too few people like him.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for everything you do, man. I love Detroit is Different.
Thank you.